All right, guys, here's the fit for today. What do we think? Do we like the fit? I love the fit, personally. So I have now decided that I'm just going to start doing a fit check at the start of every single one of my videos. Kind of a fun little thing that I'm going to do going forward because you guys really seem to like the outfits that I wear for my YouTube videos. So I think I'm going to start making that a thing. I don't know. What do you guys think? Comment down below if you guys like that idea. I kind of like that idea because I can't really show like the full outfit or the full shirt that I'm wearing when it's like cropped like this. So I think I'm going to start doing it to where I just have a fit check at the beginning of every video, and I think that would be really, really fun. Fun fact about this shirt, I know, you guys are going to say it's another Halloween shirt, it's another Michael Myers shirt. Yeah, I know. But Bloody Disgusting recently released like an entire horror collection. Like it's like a little section at Walmart stores like everywhere. And in the little town that I live in, I was not expecting for it to be at our store. And so what a nice surprise that was when me and my roommate, we went there and they had like this section, and that's where I got this shirt. It's a Halloween 2 shirt. I love this shirt. I think it's actually my favorite Michael Myers shirt that I have. So yeah, I hope you guys like it. But before we hop into the video, let me do all my shout out stuff. I want to shout out this YouTube channel, obviously, Everything and Anything Horror. If you guys like what you're seeing, if you guys like the video, please like, comment, subscribe to the channel. It really helps my channel grow. I also have a podcast called the We Love Horror Podcast, where I just talk about everything and anything horror on there as well. I'm on Instagram at the We Love Horror Podcast. I'm everywhere you stream podcasts, so I will leave a link in the description if you would like to check that podcast out. With all that out of the way, let's discuss what I'm here to talk to you about, and that is Maxxxine today. And I'm really, really excited to talk about this film. Maxxxine was obviously my most anticipated film of 2024. I can't tell you how excited I was for this movie. I love X. I am obsessed with X, actually. I watched X 5 times in the theater. I love Pearl just as much. I still prefer X a little more than I prefer Pearl, but that's just because of preference. I think the characters in X are a lot more fun than they are in Pearl. But I do, however, love the character study of Pearl more so than in X. So there's things that I love about both of those films, and there's definitely things that I love about Maxxxine. And there's definitely a few things that I don't love about Maxxxine because I don't think that it fully worked the way I was hoping it would. With that being said, let's get into the review. So Maxxxine stars Mia Goth as Maxxxine, and we fast forward a few years after the events of X, and we are following Maxxxine, who has become an adult film star in LA, and she's trying to break free of that adult star image, and she auditions for a horror film, but little does she know, her past is about to come back to haunt her. And again, this film is also written, directed, and edited by Ty West. Ty West did X and Pearl as well, and this is definitely a worthy entry into the trilogy that we got. I heard that there were rumors that there might be a 4th film, which I would not be that upset about if that was actually true. Because, to be honest with you, I think there was more that I wanted from Maxxxine. And I'm not saying that Maxxxine was a bad film by any means. I think this film was phenomenal in a lot of ways. But there was still quite a bit to be desired, and I will get into that when I get into my negatives. But let's start with the positives. I did also want to say, before I get into my review of Maxxxine, I am going to keep it spoiler-free at the start, but there are some things once I get into some of my positives and more so my negatives that I feel like I'm going to have to kind of spoil some things. So I will put up a spoiler warning when that gets to that part if you have not seen Maxxxine yet. I definitely recommend that you go see Maxxxine in the theater and then come back and finish this video. But yeah, just a warning, I am going to keep it spoiler-free for the first half of the video, and then I am going to get into spoilers. Also, make sure you stay tuned for the end of the video, because I'm also going to be doing my definitive ranking of the trilogy. So stay tuned for that. After the review, I'm also going to be adding my ranking to that. So, getting on with the positives, I want to talk about the setting of this film, because everyone that knows me, everyone who's listened to my podcast, that knows me in my personal life as well, knows that I am oh my gosh, a diehard fan of the 80s. Like, I was not born in the 80s, unfortunately. I'm a 90s child. The 90s was still great, don't get me wrong. But oh my gosh, what it would have been like to live during the 80s and just like how wild that decade was and how crazy everything was and just the way they portray it in film. I really, really enjoy most of the time. And I really, really liked the more subdued side of the 80s in Maxine, because I feel like in a lot of like 80s horror films or films that take place in the 80s in general kind of do like the technicolor, like the wild, the really high energy glossy version of the 80s. And with Maxine, it's a lot more subdued. Like you get more of the grimy side of the 80s. You do get a little bit of like technicolor in here and there, like with like the lighting and stuff, which I love. But I really like that it was more of like a subdued, kind of grimy, dirtier version of the 80s, which I love. I also loved the music in this movie. I was really surprised that we didn't get like an 80s greatest hits kind of soundtrack, because I feel like they try to do that in every kind of 80s movie. They try to put in every single, 80s hit song that came out during that time period. And my roommate and I, right before we went and saw Maxine, we both kind of came up with like these lists of songs that we thought might be in the soundtrack. All of these, songs that you hear in the 80s that were so popular, and we heard none of those songs. And I was actually really pleasantly surprised that we kind of got a different kind of soundtrack from what we're used to hearing in these films. So with that being said, like the setting is fantastic in this film. The lighting, the cinematography, everything is obviously A+ from Ty West and everyone involved with that side of the production. The next positive I have is definitely the story elements of this film. And the thing I really like about the entire trilogy in general is that each film has its own unique style and cinematography. And because with X you get like the 70s grindhouse exploitation Texas Chainsaw Massacre kind of vibe, and then with Pearl you get like the technicolor Wizard of Oz kind of dreamy kind of cinematography and story. And with Maxine you get more so of like a crime noir with like giallo elements sprinkled in here and there, and it's just like a really fun ride. I really enjoyed a lot of elements with the story, and there were a couple of things that happened that I did not see coming. I do believe I predicted in my tier ranking video that I did a couple videos ago, where I was discussing my most anticipated films of 2024. I do believe I brought up the fact that I think the Night Stalker element is a bit of a MacGuffin, kind of like a side plot to make us think that, that's what's going on, when in reality it is and it isn't. I won't spoil anything, but I was kind of right as far as that kind of theory went. But yeah, I won't spoil any more than that. The next positive I have is obviously the acting. I think everybody involved in this film did a very, very good job. We have Kevin Bacon, we obviously have Mia Goth, we have Halsey. The list goes on and on and on. There are so many great people in this film, so many great performances. Obviously Mia Goth kills it as per usual. Oh my gosh. In every film she's in, she's just so captivating to watch. Like, I can't keep my eyes off of Mia Goth when she's on screen. Like, there's just something about her that I'm just absolutely infatuated with. And so that was definitely a plus for me. I will say there were some things about Mia Goth's performance that I will get to later in my negatives, but I don't think it's necessarily her as an actress. I think it's more so like the script and the writing. There were some, things that I feel could have been a lot better, but we'll get into that when we get into my negatives. But yeah, I think everyone involved in this film did a fantastic job acting wise. I think everyone kind of pulled their own weight. There wasn't a single person that I could really single out that did a bad job. Kevin Bacon, I definitely have to give like special props to him, because he chewed this film up. Like, he really gets into it. He really gets into like the dirty, grimy, like scummy side of, this private detective that's been hired to, find Maxine. He's definitely plays a very, very good, grimy kind of private detective, to the point where like I really hated his character, but that goes to show that he did a very good job. I think Kevin Bacon did fantastic in this film. And then, you obviously get all these performances by all these other actors. And so that was a real treat to see everybody in this film have such a fun time. You could tell everyone was really enjoying this film. And for my final positive, I am also going to discuss like the practical effects in this film. Top notch. Some of the death scenes in this film were so good. And there were, and this doesn't happen to me very often because I'm very desensitized, especially with all the films that I've seen. So not a lot makes me kind of like squirm in my seat, but there were definitely a couple of scenes in this film that made me go, ooh, ouch. Yeah, that was kind of icky. So the practical effects were definitely top notch, 100%, so good. And like I said, I really did enjoy Maxxxine. I really enjoyed the first two parts of this film, like the first two acts of this film. And then the third act is where it kind of falls off the rails for me in some aspects, and that's where we get into with my negatives. So with my first negative, I kind of just want to get this out of the way right now. I think that Mia Goth obviously did fantastic in this film. She's a wonderfully talented actress. There is no denying that. She is so captivating. As I said, like, I can't keep my eyes off her when she's on screen, and I'm so excited to see her get more roles in the future, like the success that she's getting, especially from like this trilogy. And so I'm just so happy for her success. So I want to say that and get that out of the way because I don't want anybody going after me for saying that she could have done better in this film. And I'm not even necessarily saying that she could have done better. I think for me, watching her in the first two films and then watching her in Maxxxine, it did feel like her acting was a little bit more reserved. And I don't necessarily think that that is all Mia Goth's fault. I also kind of feel like the writing has a lot to do with that because I also feel like Ty West kind of played it safe with this third film as well. Because I feel like Ty West took so many risks with the first two films that when this film came along, I was expecting something a lot bigger, something a lot more grand. And this film, in a lot of ways, kind of didn't do it for me as much as the first two films did. Like, there were so many things about this film that I was so excited about seeing that I left the theater after watching Maxxxine feeling like I wanted more. And that was really unusual for me because with X and Pearl, I felt like I got everything that I wanted from those first two films. And with Maxxxine, I just kind of felt like it was missing something, like it was missing that extra oomph, you know? And with Mia Goth's performance, like, she does great, don't get me wrong, but it does kind of feel like in certain aspects, like she's just kind of sleepwalking through this film. She has like moments of greatness like sprinkled throughout, obviously, but like I feel like she has such a spark in X. Like there's just like this spark that she has. She obviously has this X factor, and she definitely has it in Maxxxine, but there was more to be desired with her performance, and there were some parts where I just kind of felt like she was just kind of sleepwalking through the film, especially when like people around her start dying. Like her reactions were kind of to me, like they kind of just felt a little too reserved for someone who's friends with all these people. I was just kind of expecting her to have more of a reaction. But besides that, I think she did great. I was just expecting a little bit more from her is all. And this first negative kind of segues into my next negative that I have for this film is I felt like with X and Pearl, we got such excellent characters. For a slasher film with X, like I was not expecting to love all of the characters as much as I did. And with Pearl, like you get such a huge, amount of character development with Pearl, and even with the side characters in Pearl, you get to know so much about all these characters. And with Maxxxine, it just kind of felt like these characters were kind of just thrown in here to be cannon fodder. And that was kind of an issue for me because I wanted to be more invested in these characters. Like I felt like there could have been a few more scenes with her and like these side characters that she's going on this journey with in this film, because I just didn't feel like we got enough of these people to truly kind of feel that impact when they all start to die in this film. And so that for me was lacking, unfortunately. I felt like I wasn't attached to any of these characters. So when their, untimely demises kind of happen in this film, I was just kind of like, okay, like that was brutal, that was disturbing, but I'm not affected as much as I was when I watched X, because I was very, very sad to see all those characters start to die in X. And with Maxxine, I just didn't feel any sort of emotional connection with any of these side characters, which was unfortunate and very surprising to me. Because as I said, the first two films are so character driven. And so it was a bit of a shock to me that these characters weren't more developed. So unfortunately, that was kind of lacking for me in that department. The next negative that I wanted to bring up was some of the story elements. Like, as much as I loved kind of where the general story was going in the first two acts of this film, there were some scenes or, just certain events that happened in this film that I just kind of felt weren't really warranted or needed. Like, for example, there is a scene with Kevin Bacon and Mia Goth's character where he is chasing her through like this film lot on the Hollywood set, and they run up to like the Psycho set, and like he chases her up the stairs to that. And in my mind, I thought maybe it was going to be like an elaborate chase scene like through this set, and I was like, oh, that'd be kind of cool, like throwing it back to like maybe some Scream 3 vibes where, one of my favorite scenes from Scream 3 is when Ghostface is chasing Sydney through the stab set. I think that scene is so fucking great. And I was thinking that was where this scene was going to go. And then it kind of just goes nowhere, and the scene just kind of ends. And it's just kind of like, what was the point of that scene? Like, it just didn't feel like it needed to be in the film. I feel like you can completely cut that scene out and just cut directly to like the scene where he's watching her in the club, and it would be the same movie without, really missing much. But that's just my opinion. I like kind of watched that scene, and afterward I was just kind of thinking to myself, like, that was really not needed. Like, that whole scene just like kind of was, I felt like it was wasting time, really. There are like a couple of other scenes that I can't really think of off the top of my head that I just kind of felt that way about. So yeah, there were some story elements that like this script just felt a lot weaker than the first two films. There was just a lot missing for me. There was so much like meat that like I just felt like was missing, and that was really disappointing for me, unfortunately. But that also leads to the third act of this film, which kind of just goes off the rails, to be honest with you. It was definitely unexpected in a lot of ways. I will say, I will give this film that. Like, it was fun in the fact that like it definitely took some wild turns that I was not expecting. However, I'm not sure that's such a great thing with certain aspects of the third act of this film. For example, there is a reveal at the third act of this film that the killer, or what the Night Stalker, as we will say, is basically just a copycat killer of the actual Night Stalker. So this is not the real Night Stalker that is going after Maxxine in this film. Just letting you guys know that right now. It is actually her father. You find out that the killer the whole time has been her father, and he's come back to, take revenge on her and anyone else who kind of defies his religious beliefs. And for me, I kind of started putting the pieces together toward the second act of the film. I kind of started thinking to myself that I think I knew who the killer was. For me, it was obviously someone from Maxxine's past that was coming back to kind of hunt her down, because I couldn't think of who else it would be other than someone that she's already been in contact with in her past. And so I kind of narrowed down the suspects pretty quickly. And so right before you get to the reveal of it being her father, I almost turned to my roommate that was sitting right next to me and was like, I think it's her dad. And sure enough, it was her dad. So it wasn't the most terrible reveal, but I did find it to be a little bland and kind of, I was kind of just like, oh, okay, that's cool, I guess. Like, it just kind of, I don't know, I was just expecting it to pack a little bit more of a punch. And also for this like third act scene, I was like expecting Mia Goth to be a little more of a badass, but she's just kind of like in the scene the whole time. She's kind of tied up and she's not really able to do much. And then you get like these two detective characters that come in and save the day. And for me, that's like not the Maxxine that we've come to know in the last like film. Like in X, like she was kind of a badass and she could carry her own. In the third act of this film, she kind of becomes the damsel in distress character. And that just felt really out of character for her, because I was really hoping that in this third act she was going to kick some ass and that she was going to just, destroy all these people. And I mean, she does have moments in this film that she does that. Like, there's an alley scene in this film involving her stomping on a man's testicles that was just very, very painful to watch. There's also a scene where she lures Kevin Bacon's character and basically kills him, and that scene was pretty badass as well. So she does have moments where she fights back, and I wish there was more of that in the third act. I kind of just feel like she became this damsel in distress who needed saving. And for me, that just felt out of character, and it just felt really weird that was in there. I just kind of wish there was a way they could have made it so that she is able to, save the day on her own. But with that being said, there's just so many wacky things that make this third act pretty ridiculous. Starting with these detective characters, there's just some things about these detective characters that are very cartoonish to me. Like, there's a scene, for example, where they're chasing her father. Like, there's this big shootout, and they're shooting all these cult members, and the detectives go after her father. And there's a scene where the woman detective, I can't remember the actress's name, I apologize, but she all of a sudden just comes out of nowhere, and she's got a cross stabbed through her eye, and she's like, ugh. And then she just rolls down the hill, and it was just so comical to me. Like, I was just like, is this supposed to be funny, or is this supposed to be, like, serious? Because it just felt really comedic and not in, like, a way that felt like it matched the tone of the first two acts of this film. Like, the first two acts of this film felt like they took themselves very seriously, and then you get to the third act of this film, and it just goes off the rails, and it felt really disjointed with the other two acts of this film. It just felt really, really weird and out of place. And then her father, I don't know the actor who plays her dad, but he's also very over the top and cartoonish, which I guess is kind of fitting for that cult leader kind of vibe. I feel like in any film of this nature, when you have a cult and there's a cult leader, they're always kind of zany and over the top. But this guy was very, very over the top, like very cartoonish. It reminded me of Starry Eyes. There's like a character in Starry Eyes. He's like the producer of like this sketchy production company, and he's also very over the top. Like, there's a scene where he's like, "She's ready to transform," and if you've seen that film, you know exactly what scene I'm talking about. But this just kind of felt very similar in that aspect, where it's just very over the top, very cartoonish. And in some aspects, it really took me out of the film. Just this third act in general really took me out of the film. And I just kind of sat there and was like, huh, okay, this is really where they're going with this. Okay. I will say, like, there were some fun elements about the third act. I'm not saying that it was all not great. But most of it was just very underwhelming and very, like, weird. Like, it just didn't feel like it fit with the other parts of the film. It just went off the rails. That's all. I mean, I don't know what else I can say about it other than it just went batshit crazy at the end. And speaking of the ending, I also just found the ending to be very, very underwhelming. I wanted more of a conclusive end to this trilogy. Like, if this is going to be the last film that we get in this trilogy, I wanted to get something more out of it than what we got, unfortunately. But yeah, that being said, I still don't think Maxxxine is a terrible film. Like, I would still go watch this film a million more times. I would still get something out of this film every time I watched it. I'm still going to definitely buy this film when it comes out. And I would highly recommend that anyone who has not seen Maxxxine, definitely go support it. Definitely go see it in the theater, because this is one of the best films of 2024, hands down. And with all the negatives that I had with this film, there is still so much to love about Maxxxine. And I really, really, really am so grateful to Ty West and Mia Goth and everybody that was involved with this trilogy. It's just such a special trilogy. And it has a special place in my heart. It always will. Like, this trilogy means so much to me. I loved it. I love it. I love it so much. And like I said, I was disappointed with certain aspects of Maxxxine, but I'm confident to say that Maxxxine is still a worthy, end to this trilogy if this is the end. With that being said, guys, that is the end of my review, and now we are going to definitively rank this trilogy. So, starting at number 3, we unfortunately have Maxxxine. As I said before, this film just didn't pack the punch that I was hoping that it would. I didn't come out of the theater feeling like I got what I wanted out of it, like I did with X and Pearl. Like with X and Pearl, I felt like it scratched an itch that I didn't realize that I had. And with Maxxxine, I just felt like there was more to be desired. So that's unfortunately, Maxxxine is going to be number 3 in my ranking. Number 2 is going to go to Pearl. I fucking love Pearl. I think the story is amazing. I love the setting. I love the Technicolor dreamy aspects of Pearl. I love that we get so much more of a backstory and kind of an explanation as to why she is the way she is in X. And there's a lot of fun little throwbacks. Like, I always recommend to people that they watch X first. I mean, technically Pearl is a prequel, but I would recommend watching X first just because it definitely enhances Pearl, but Pearl also enhances X at the same time. Like, you could watch either film in any order that you wanted to, and it still wouldn't change the experience. So Pearl is definitely going to be number 2 in my ranking. And number 1 is obviously X. I adore X. X is my favorite film of 2022. I saw it in the theater 5 times. I was so, and still am, obsessed with this film. I can just not get, I can't get enough of this film. I love X. Everything about X is perfection to me. There's not a single thing wrong, in my opinion, with X. Ty West did a flawless job. Everybody involved did a flawless job. We get Jenna Ortega, we get Brittany Snow, we get Kid Cudi, we get Mia Goth. This cast is stacked, and everybody is so great in this film. The characters are great. The slasher elements are great. The gore is great. Like, everything about X is perfection to me. And so obviously X is going to be number 1 in my ranking. That is my definitive ranking of the X, Pearl, and Maxxxine trilogy. Leave your thoughts down below if you agree with my rankings. If you don't agree with my rankings, let me know how you rank these films. Let me know your thoughts on Maxxxine as well, because I would love to have a conversation with you guys about Maxxxine. If you disagree with some of the thoughts that I had, I would love to have a conversation about it. Please keep it positive, though. We don't need negativity. The world is definitely negative enough. We don't need all these negative opinions. So please keep it positive, guys. And like I said, if you like this video, please comment, like, subscribe, turn on your post notifications so that you can always be notified when I put out a new video. Also, follow my podcast, the We Love Horror podcast. I stream on any podcast platform. I have a Instagram, I have a TikTok, all under the We Love Horror podcast. So please check all of those links out. I will link them in the description below, and I will see you guys next time. Stay spooky. Bye.